but I think you can probably hear me. Yeah, we welcome you to kind of come in the front. We got chances to visit with, talk or interact with people close to you, and also we'd like for Joy to be able to sit as much as she needs to. So we'll look to you to take care of doing that if you need to. We welcome you. We're so glad you're here. I think there's just some really valuable information going to be shared today. We personally have been on a journey of understanding more about the brain and how it works and what we can do to promote health and healing. And attachments is a pretty big part of that. So we just trust it'll be a time for you to feel at home and to get what God has for you today. I would like to start with a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this day. It's a special day. It's a day you've made, and we rejoice and are glad in it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for designing our bodies, our brains, our souls, knowing about our emotional conditions and how you designed us to show your love. So, Lord, we're just trusting for you to be here in a special way, anointing our ears. Give Joy the ability to share in a way that we can grab a hold of. And Lord, we're just claiming your love and comfort and your presence. May each be blessed in the time here. We give this day to you, Lord, for your glory. In the name of Jesus, we ask it. Amen. So some of you have been here before. So Joy Kreider has been studying neuroscience quite a bit, and I guess that's become her livelihood, her main focus. And so I think she has a lot to offer us, and she has had exposure to many, many situations and people. So I'd like to give her the floor. She can tell me a little more about herself. We were privileged to meet her in a prison intensive. And that's been a journey for us to know her and have her contribute. So may the Lord bless. Yeah.
Well, good morning to you. I'm glad that you're here. I hope that you will take some things away with you that are of assistance in your own journey with self, journey with friends and partners, journey with children and other relatives. Attachment does matter a lot, and it is dependent upon the brain of the baby and the brain of the adult simultaneously. And that's part of why I think attachment is such a beautiful thing, because it's really a conversation back and forth between parents and children and spouses. And attachment isn't only about infancy, it's also how do we connect to people as adults. Are there fears? Are there things that block my path to being vulnerable with the people that most matter in my life? And is there a way to move beyond that? And the answer is yes, there are ways to move beyond that. So I am a PhD level neuroscientist, and I worked in the science world for about 11 years. I was an animal researcher studying the parts of the brain that give rise to ultimately the adult version of sleep, REM, slow wave sleep. And there was a lot we didn't know. We know a lot more now. My dissertation answered some questions, and the person I worked for has continued to ask questions, and it's been very gratifying to see the ongoing development. What we hoped we would find if we did the right work, we found, and that's a great gift. In 2009, and I won't go real long into my story, but just so that you know kind of where I'm coming from. In 2009, I left science, and I moved to San Francisco with a multi-denominational mission group called Interchange, an order of Christians among the poor. And while I was there, I lived there for 6 years in community with other missionaries, some who were working in Golden Gate Park, among the 1,000 or so people who sleep in that park every night. And I worked with, and my team worked with kids that were behind bars at juvenile hall. We were there 5 days a week. We had many kids who were gang affiliated. Some of those kids ended up coming to live with us. Some of those kids turned into adults who walked away from violence, walked away from selling drugs, and have found their way into a relationship with Jesus Christ, into Christian community there in the Bay Area. It was an amazing, challenging, amazing 6 years. And it certainly where part of my interest about trauma came up, because you don't join the kinds of gangs that existed in my neighborhood unless you were already terribly traumatized. The people on the inside of the house were doing more damage to you than the homies on the street. And so you gravitated towards someone else that you thought might have your back and actually care about you. After 6 years there, I had about a year sabbatical, and then I moved to Cambodia and worked among poor taxi drivers in one of the poor neighborhoods of Phnom Penh, the capital city. And trauma is everywhere. 40 years ago, Pol Pot rose up, gained the support of rice farmers, marched into Phnom Penh and all the other big cities, emptied those cities. If you had soft hands, if you were a man and you didn't have any calluses on your hands, you were killed usually within a day or two. He wanted to get rid of anybody that might challenge his authority, anybody that might call foul for the sorts of things he was trying to teach. And so about 250,000 people died across a 3-year period. And then it continued. Vietnam came in and took control. The work camps remained. Most people starved. It's amazing anybody survived. One of my colleagues, 3/4 of his family, and it was 30 family members were killed by the Khmer Rouge. Just a really heavy thing. But where I looked, I saw trauma and I also saw resilience. And so that shaped when I came home. I focused on trauma work, and I stayed in my organization for several more years as a trauma consultant. I wrote literature. I taught classes for individual teams, for all of our teams as a whole. And I continued to learn. I'm also, if you were there last time I was here in 23, you know that I'm also a trauma survivor. And so the things that I think about and the things that I share, any activities that we're going to do together today, I have done them as well and found them helpful. So currently, I run my own little nonprofit called Deliberate Dialogues. I'm an N of 1. I work for myself. I have a board. I kind of split my time between seeing individual clients because I have a certification as a trauma coach, and with writing and offering trainings to folks like you. I've had a number. I'm actually in the middle of a trauma training right now with 12 pastors from the United Methodist Church of Virginia. It's been amazing. I have more work like that waiting for me in the fall. So I am becoming locally known, and that's a huge gift. You don't know. When I took this leap in 2021, I had no idea if anybody would ever want to have a conversation like some of the conversations we're having today. Of course, attachment and trauma are related, right? And we'll get a chance to see some of those connections. But attachment is amazing to me because it really takes both parent and child. And children, babies come out, and mostly what they have that's functioning fully and clearly is right brain, is emotional relationship. If I'm very, very anxious and I try to get my infant to attach at the breast, the infant might refuse me. If I'm very, very angry, if I'm very, very sad, my infant, who does not yet have any spoken language, does not have yet logic to make sense of the world, they track that. We were prepared as adults and as infants to find this matching of attending to the emotions and the emotional regulation of the child, and as a child being able to send the messages, hey, I'm not okay, I'm really stressed, I need my diaper changed. And I don't have children, but I'm sure that many of you do. And I'm told that especially with the first child, in those first months, you learn what different cries mean. Who knew that infants had more than one kind of cry? Well, become a parent and you'll discover that's true. And that's God given. That infant was born with that circuitry to ask you for help. And I love that. I don't know about you, but I grew up in a culture where emotions were distrusted. They were often swept under the rug, especially the unpleasant ones. And often people would say things like emotions cannot be trusted. But the emotional connection between infants and their parents tells a very different tale. And if we need that emotion and that regulation when we're an infant, we also need it as an adult. And so part of what inspires me also about talking about attachment is trying to kind of peel back the layers and look at the ways in which emotion, reading emotion, and expressing emotion, that it matters. And it's not meant to be swept under the rug, and we don't have to pretend that it doesn't have any meaning. I think nothing's further from the truth. All right, I'm just going to go past the outline. I just said that from the beginning of our prenatal and postnatal lives, emotion and what it conveys creates a critical scaffold for the self, for kindness, for compassion, for empathy. It's profound. So if you've been to a seminar with me before, you know that I do not like to talk for more than about 10 minutes at a time. The adult learning literature says if you ask adults to sit through a 30 to 60 minute lecture, they will retain far less of that material than if you talk for about 10 minutes and then ask people to apply what they're learning, or ask people, get together, what are your questions, bring that into me. So we're going to do that. We're going to have that kind of a conversation over today, and I hope that you will find it helpful. The first one I'm going to ask you to process, if you had to define attachment, giving what you know, I'm not expecting you to be a scientist who has all the lingo, but what is attachment, or how would you define it? It's written in your handouts, and I want to encourage us to just take a couple minutes to think about what would you say, and then share something with your neighbor about what you wrote, or ask your neighbor a question, and then I'm going to pull you back in and ask you to report in on what you heard, what was said. All right, the floor is yours. What is attachment, or how would you define it? Yes. Bingo. Indeed. I'm going to draw you back together in about 2 minutes. Oops. Do you need napkins? No. All right, I'm going to call you back in. You can shout, you can raise your hand, but you can also just shout out in here. What is attachment, or how would you define it? What are some responses? Silence. Say that again.
Feel your connection.
Feeling your connection, absolutely.
One word, trust.
Trust, one word, yes.
A feeling of safety expresses a need and the adult meets that need, which means infant may feel I belong,
Mm-hmm.
I'm secure,
Mhm.
I'm not alone.
Absolutely. When the infant has a need and the adult meets that need, that allows us to feel safe, secure, protected from harm. And then, Dorcas, you had
Feeling of safety.
a feeling of safety. Absolutely. Yes. One or two more?
As a vine, it's sustaining life. It's attached to.
As a vine, it's sustaining life. It makes me think of you are the vine. I am the vine, you are the branches. Yep. Lovely. One more?
A lifelong relationship intrinsic to who we are.
Beautiful. Thank you. I paid him to say that. Here's what, you guys know the answer to this. I'm going to fly past that one. What are some long-term consequences if infants are actively ignored and not well cared for? Again, I'm going to turn it loose to you and then have you come back. What are some long-term consequences that you're aware of if infants are actively ignored and not well cared for? I'll turn it back to you. Don't read too far ahead. What are some long-term consequences if infants are actively ignored and not well cared for? You can shout them out.
No one has my back. I need to always fend for myself.
Absolutely. No one has my back.
It builds huge walls of protection.
Huge walls. That's right. Maybe if it's thick enough and high enough, nobody will get in and hurt me.
Anxiety, wondering if your needs will be met in the future.
Absolutely. Anxiety. Does anyone care about me? And will I be okay? Inability to self-regulate. Can you define self-regulate? I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, obviously that would evolve as you grow up. You can't expect a baby to regulate in the same way that you would an adult.
Correct.
Sometimes you'll encounter an adult who stuck in elementary
Yes.
or dysregulation.
Yes.
I don't, so if I'm the infant that can't attach, then I don't know who I am because I haven't learned or haven't been taught who I am.
Yeah. Who am I and how am I separate from my caregiver? How are we similar? How are we different? All those and more, right? Questions about identity are not answered very clearly.
And then they start reacting.
Absolutely.
It's like red.
Right.
Reacting toward the people that I really want and need. But
Correct. Right, and right, take it a step further. If you're not going to pay attention to me, I'm going to make you pay attention to me.
right, in violent ways.
In violent ways, in loud ways.
Yes.
When really what they're clamoring for is just come and sit with me and listen to me. Yeah. One more?
Overgiving.
Over.
Overgiving, like if a child has an attached, or almost have to, as parent to mother, like, love me as I love you. Like, I need to make my mama okay so that she
Yes.
knows that I'm okay.
Yes. Very good. All right, I think there's one more. And you don't have to talk to people about this because I think you know the answer. What is one thing that you hope to learn from today? Take a risk. What's a question that brought you through the door?
How to heal my own traumas so that I can better parent.
Okay. How to heal my own traumas so I can be a better parent. Thank you. Couple more, please.
If I feel that my attachment style has shifted or changed, why is that and how do I navigate that shift?
Okay. Good question.
How to help adults that still have these
Yeah.
attachment issues, and for me personally, how to help myself
Mm-hmm.
who continues to struggle with attachment.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the again after they ask?
Yes. Will you say yours again?
I don't like getting annoyed. How to help adults
Adults.
with, who are still as adults struggling with attachment issues they don't even know. And then how to help my son, who is still at 25, still struggling with.
Okay. How to help adults who maybe are not so well attached figure that out. What does that mean for an adult to attach to somebody else? And then how do I help my own son who has attachment issues and he's an adult, but there are issues that are unresolved? One more?
How to help my
Yes, how to help my newborn and my children to attach well. That's a good question. All right, we're gonna keep going here. So some basic history, just so you kind of, I'm a neuroscientist and I'm an academician. We don't ever make claims without providing evidence for those claims. So one of the first persons, and he's not very popular today because today you would not be allowed to take a one-day-old rhesus monkey and separate it from its mother for the sake of doing experiments. But in the 1930s, you could. He took rhesus monkeys away from their mother on the day of birth, and he put them in these enclosures that you can see up there. One, let's see, my laser does really work. Let's see if we can see it. Oh, not very well. All right. You can see the enclosure. One is a soft monkey mother-ish looking thing. One is a less mother-ish looking metal thing that has a nipple and a bottle or a tube, and they can only feed from the metal one, but they are in the enclosure. They can move back and forth between the two. The other mother is soft and fuzzy. What do you think happened? Where did the babies spend most of their time? On the wire mom or on the soft mom? Soft mom. Yep. And this was a shock because the expectation in the day was that children attach to their mothers because the mother provides them with food, which is a really sort of, from our perspective, right, it's a really shallow thing to assume that would build such a deep attachment. But we also didn't really even have the word attachment. Bowlby hadn't showed up on the scene. There was just a lot we took for granted that we just didn't know. What might we conclude from this? These experiments predate Bowlby's work, who is the person who is really kind of the father of attachment theory. So that was Harlow in the 30s. And now Dr. John Bowlby, he was a British psychologist and psychiatrist. He was the first person ever, he and another colleague. So in the early 1950s, England is digging out from World War II and all of the harm all the damage to the cities, all the deaths. And he was working in a hospital, and a lot of kids were coming in for various issues. And they found out that the kids that came into the hospital were more likely to die, 35% more likely to die, than the children that were kept at home that were not well. And what he assumed, and what was correct, so the nurses were taught to treat the infants like they were adults. So other than holding them maybe to feed them, there was no skin-to-skin contact. There was not a lot of rocking. There was not a lot of play behavior happening between the nurses and the kids. And the parents were only allowed to come to the unit for 1 hour on Sundays. And that was thought to be sufficient, which, right, not. Again, they just didn't know better. But I love that John Bowlby came onto the scene, because he changed how psychiatrists, psychologists, family doctors, pediatricians, it changed how Western world viewed the needs of their children in a really important way. He proposed that infants have this built-in need to emotionally and psychologically bond to their caregivers. They arrive right-brained, and they are able to recruit the help of their parents through crying, sighing, cooing, and oohing. Best parenting methods include not a perfect, but a good enough response. So his work, and Mary Ainsworth, who follows him, and other people since, the note is not that the expectation is that you are going to be perfectly attuned, perfectly aware of what your infant needs at every moment of every day. First of all, it's just not humanly possible. In fact, they've measured this in the lab, and they said that, and this has been held up, I think, across multiple studies, really clear attunement where mom's really tracking and the baby is the baby is sad and the mom picks the baby up and the baby gets calm and gets happy again. 30% of the time between a mom and an infant is sufficient for good emotional bonding. And you know, our lives are busy, right? If you happen to be at home and not working in the real world, but you're working with your kids, there's food to prepare, there's all sorts of household, there's all sorts of needs. If you have any other children, now the infant is balancing time with whoever else is in the household. So the notion is not that you have to get it perfect, not at all. And I love actually that this is what he taught, because we don't really need the message you're screwing up, right? Like, we worry enough. I think most good parents worry enough about, how am I doing this? Is it really working? Is he learning good boundaries? Is she, right? You can insert a lot of questions into there. And I love that that was Bowlby's attitude and that he wrote in that way. He was the first to conclude that early experiences shape self and emotional regulation. Yes, and Freud and some other people were moving in that direction as well, sort of coming at it from different directions. But he changed how academia, how medicine, how pediatrics, how school teachers, how pediatric nurses, he changed how we relate to our children, period. And along comes his first a student and then a colleague, Dr. Mary Ainsworth. She was Canadian and American, I think. She followed in his footsteps, and she created something called the strain situation. And that's shown here in that little cartoon. So I think I describe it here, yes. So a researcher is observing, the one on the pink chair is observing as this scenario unfolds. Mom and baby come into this room. There's a nice soft carpet on the floor. There's comfortable chairs and there's toys. And mom might get down in the first 3 minutes with the baby and, examining different things. And then a stranger comes into the room that they've never seen before. And this researcher is watching for how much eye contact. Is the baby oriented towards the stranger or toward mom? And then mom actually leaves the room for a few minutes. And what is if you're well attached, what's going to happen to a 12-month-old when they see mom leave the room? Right? That baby is going to start. That toddler is going to start crying. And then the stranger attempts to comfort and play with the child, and then caregiver, mom. I sort of went halfway in my slides. I don't like only saying mom because there are lots of men who are deeply involved with parenting their kids. So I apologize. I get it right on some of the slides, but not on all of them. And this is actually still used today. There are various configurations. This isn't the only way to use this experimental concept, as it were. It's been very useful in the literature to help people sort through when kids are between 12 and 18 months. How do they respond to new, strange stimuli? How do they respond to whether or not mom is in the room or out of the room? What Mary Ainsworth found was that there were 4 different types of attachment. So the kids who are securely attached, we generally see that they're able to express full range of emotions. They have the ability, as they grow up, they have the ability to self-soothe and to regulate the self. So if I am really, really upset and I'm well attached, I'm going to go find one of my parents. I'm going to find a caregiver or even an older brother or sister because I fell and I bumped my knee and I need help. Is generally okay. These kids are generally okay with other people's feelings and emotions. Obviously, that's an older, that's 3 and 4 and 5 years old. That's not happening at 12 to 18 months. Has the ability to show and convey empathy towards others. Has the ability to reach out and also to receive. And caregivers' behavior is that often enough, the parent consistently responds when the child has expressed need, one way or another. 3 other possible types. Avoidant attachment. These kids show restricted emotion, and as they get a little older, they don't show much empathy for other people. If a younger sibling is crying, and you're an avoidant, you probably won't go and try to comfort that child. You're sort of in your own little world. You comfort yourself with things, activities, distractions, like exercising, work, food, etc. Addictions and substance use in adults, not in children, becomes common. It's difficult to share their own feelings. It's difficult to really make deep commitments and to, emotional empathy. Sorry. Got up too early this morning. My tongue's not working. To be intimate with another human being, we have to let down our guard, right? We have to be willing to let them in. And that's something that folks who struggle with avoidant attachment, it's very hard to let others in. One way to respond if you bop down to the caregiver's behavior, the parent or caregiver is inconsistent and neglectful, often detached. So it's not so surprising, right, that someone that grew up like that is going to suppress their own needs and wants. I think especially when they're in social situations with other people in the room. And it's also, I think, it's easy to imagine why they might be drawn towards addictions. Because there's still an emptiness. There's still a longing to feel something, to be seen, to feel comfort. And food and alcohol and drugs can do that for a time, and then it's not really helping anymore. And so then you're in a spiral to travel back to that thing that meets their need. They value distance and space, and we alluded to caregivers' behavior. They tend to be inconsistent and neglectful, often detached, and they'll only respond when the kid's really ramping up. Mom, my dirty diaper, and I'm now not only crying, I'm screaming, and my face is turned red, and I'm shaking. And then the parent kind of is able to get up and do, at least some of the time. Ambivalent attachment. These kids desire closeness, but it's never really enough because there's a need at home that isn't being met, right? So these kids also struggle with enmeshment and codependency. Am I and my mom actually separate from each other? Or are her needs more important than my needs? And so then that means I need to be the one that becomes the caretaker of her. That's a problem, right? This is not what children are designed or destined to do, but it does happen. They have a strong fear of abandonment and rejection. They tend to cling, but they're also very critical. They're cautious about depending on others. They have a hard time feeling comfort. So I would say that these folks, it's not up there, but I would say that these folks also potentially are in the high risk zone for something to fill the emptiness that they carry around with themselves. And then kind of like the last group, these caregivers are also unpredictable. But when they respond, sometimes they respond with too much or too little, either smothering, helicoptering the kid, or being very distant and dismissive of the child's needs. And then our last group, it didn't get recognized until the 1990s. But the last group is maybe the saddest group. Disorganized. They desire closeness, but they fear it at the same time because their parents actually have either done harm to them or have done things that are very frightening in front of them. And so they're not sure, is it safe? They may merge or distance dance, get closer and then run away, sort of like what we see sometimes with folks who have the bipolar diagnosis, or not bipolar, borderline diagnosis. There's this ongoing inner paradox and inner turmoil about, I do have needs, but I don't know if they're safe to help me take care of my needs. I'm 4 and I still need to be held and I still need clean clothes and food, but my mom only does laundry every 2 weeks. These are the sorts of things, these are the messages that can get sent in these situations. No real sharing ability, attracted to people who victimize and take advantage of them. They sabotage closeness and intimacy. Intimacy must be absolutely terrifying. If the people that are supposed to be most intimate with you may behave as if they themselves are frightened, or they have frightening behavior towards the child. They may withdraw. They may show great negativity. Another situation where there can be role confusion, who's taking care of who, communication errors, and maltreatment. This is often also associated with overt abusiveness towards the child. So this is a household that is in significant disarray, right? Other texts that I've read suggest this is also potentially a parent who's mentally ill and not well managed. I had a friend in undergrad whose parents met at the long-term mental health inpatient program in their county. You went there and you stayed there for years. I believe mom had bipolar and dad had schizophrenia. And what she described about her childhood was just heartbreaking. And her greatest fear was that a lot of times things like schizophrenia and bipolar don't get diagnosed until we're in our late 20s. Her greatest fear was that she would become like her parents. And of course, right? Yeah. I don't even know what you say. And I didn't stay in touch with her. I don't know where she is today. And she was drawn to psychology partially because she was trying to understand herself and understand what happened, and can I understand what my parents did? Why did they do what they did? And who am I and what am I going to do? This is the toughest group in the attachment literature. Dr. Ainsworth concluded, this isn't going to surprise you, that secure attachment is directly linked to a caregiver's ability to consistently respond to their child's needs. Conversely, inconsistent care leads to ambivalent attachment or these other attachment types, and neglectful care can lead to avoidant as well. And I would say you could add disorganized here as well. I think it depends on how inconsistently and what are the other things that might be going on in that household. Okay, I'm going to stop. Any questions?
Is the person able to have multiple attachment types?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know the answer. If not, what kind of comes to the surface for me is the Enneagram literature. Like, maybe you are a specific type, but if enough crazy things are happening in your childhood, it seems like you could pick up issues from all of the three groups that are not really well attached. Do you have a situation where you think that might be true?
So my son in particular, I have my style. His father and his stepmother had two different styles themselves,
Oh boy.
just all based on different childhoods.
Right.
So he's a chameleon.
Yes.
One way, and then with them you can tell trauma
Yes.
down. So it's, what's he gonna
Right.
come out?
That's right. So the question is about a situation where a child has a step parent and the marriage and also the mom. And all three of the adults that care for this child have different types of attachment, different issues, different concerns. What is that kid going to turn out to be? It's a very good question. Are there other people in the room that have a response to that question?
I would think it would depend on still the level of care that that particular child receives, because they're still their own individuals. It's not like they're receiving somebody else's attachment style directly.
Right. Yeah, but it is also it is a very serious question, right? And I think you already know this. What you have control of is how you are with your son when you have him. Yes.
I have a question about like kids that are adopted on day one.
Yes.
There has been a tremendous traumatic experience for that
Yes.
child. And I'm curious about like how that early trauma transfers into later life.
Yes.
Even though this child from day one has been very well cared for by
Yes.
the adoptive parents,
Yes.
there's still a very huge trauma.
Yes. So what happens, what attachment occurs when a child is taken from the original birth mother and even day one is put into the arms of another caring family, let's say? What are the long-term issues of that loss of attachment? Yes. And so I'll say a couple different things. And I want to encourage you, I apologize, I don't have my phone number or my email in any of the materials, but I will get it to you. I would love for you to email me and remind me of that question, because I believe there is a literature. I have dabbled only a tiny bit. So one of the things about adoption that actually something that my therapist and I have had conversations about, because I was adopted and then I was abused by the people who adopted me. Infants on day 1, day 2, day 3, if they are presented with a Q-tip with water on it, a Q-tip with saline, a Q-tip with another mother's milk, and a Q-tip with mom's milk, guess which one they preferentially head turn? Towards mom's milk. Mind-boggling. They're learning way more. It's also true that in the 50s, in science, in neuroscience, we used to talk about the belief that everybody was a cabbage head. So there was this belief up into the 1950s and 60s that nothing that happened in utero was particularly important. That they're a tabula rasa, and when they come out, they're a blank slate, and we can write into that, whatever the parents want, and that's not true. Because the baby already knows. There's also evidence that the baby knows the actual mother's voice. They've done some really early imaging, I think within a month. The babies will show a very specific activation to mom's voice or dad's voice, and not to other women's voices, not to other men's voices. There is an attachment wound, and it's not studied enough. I found a paper. It's been more than a year, and I need to look for it again because I was so struck by it. So this woman is I believe she's a PhD level. She's either a social worker or a sociologist. I don't remember which, but she tells in a journal. So professors and people that write these papers, you never ever admit any sort of weakness. And you never really tell anything that might be bad about what happened to you. And she published this in a journal. So I have thought about writing her a letter and just thanking her for being willing to be honest. She was adopted around day 1. She was loved with parents who were good enough parents. There was reasonably good attachment. But in her adult life, when she lost a baby, I think it was I don't remember. The baby wasn't born, but she carried that baby at least 1 or 2 trimesters and then lost the baby. She discovered that she had a deep river, this might make me cry, a deep river of sadness, of sorrow that she had never named before, that was related to not having a parent that they were already biologically bonded to some degree because they grew up in that person's belly. So there are huge issues, and I would love to come sometime and talk to you about adoption, to go off and do that. Coming and talking to you means I get to read a whole bunch of stuff that I've been wanting to read for months but haven't made it happen. Adoption isn't studied enough, and I loved her paper because she was really, really honest. And she went and did the work with a therapist, and it was clear that had always been there, but she had never been able to name it. And with this grief around a life, that it came to the surface. And this is not, I don't want to say you shouldn't adopt, and I don't want to say that if you're adopted you can't have, a good life with people that you love. But adoption is a real, being taken from the person who carried you is a wound. It's not the only wound. And the person who's asking me in the back knows that it's not. Parents can wound as well. But adoption is a big deal, and we don't understand it very well.
Just from my personal, I've never been married, don't have any kids. But
Right.
My brother adopted 2 kids from Taiwan. And, well cared for.
Yes.
But later, it's like, there's some
Yeah.
dysfunction there.
Yeah.
And I know other families who have also adopted.
Yep.
And I've often wondered, I don't think science fully understands the wound that is inflicted upon the infant.
Absolutely.
On day one.
Absolutely.
Because there has been that traumatic separation.
Yes. Yes.
The person that they have, grown up in or whatever.
Yeah. I'm with you 100% on that. And it is something we don't talk enough about.
And, in reference to the mom and stepmom, the three parents.
Yeah.
It's so hard to know what a child is going to,
I know.
the difficulties they will face as far as attachment.
Right.
There's so many factors.
Right. And so we're going to look at aversive childhood experiences very shortly today, partly because if you don't know about it, I want you to know about it. But now so that's aversive childhood experiences, how it impacts health and emotional well-being and relationships and biology. There's also the PACES literature, which is positive childhood experiences. And the evidence is that if you have adults, and I can say for myself that there were several school teachers and a couple people in my church who chose to take an interest in me and who at one point said, your mom and dad told us that they think you're really dumb and that you're never going to even survive high school. You're not. You come and babysit for us. You ask interesting and important questions. You need to know you are not dumb. Somebody did that for me. And in the moment, I didn't know how important it was. But it was important. And there were teachers who really cared about me. And one teacher said, I knew something was wrong at home. I didn't know what. And she apologized for not knowing. And I'm like, look, if I wasn't sexually acting out with kids, if I wasn't journaling, drawing, if none of that was on the surface, there's just no way you can know. But regardless of the adoption wound, it matters to have people that really love us in our lives. And that's the thing that you can offer. But it's also a troubling question that I'm sure is hard to live with. Yes?
I would love for you to come back and treat the adoption picture.
Okay.
Because our son was adopted, but you add on to 18 months of being neglected, being shut up in a house all by himself. While the mother went off to work. Okay, so he has begun to attach to us, but then I think we're constantly fighting messages of
Yes.
I'm okay, and kind of withdrawing.
Yes.
I would just love to have answers of how, as I now, who he does tell me he loves me, I think there's more of attachment. How do I deal with that constant conflicting thing of pull away, move toward
Yes.
that, like,
It's hard.
I'm okay. So
Yeah.
I encourage you to study and come up
Okay.
with amazing answers.
Well, I'll do my best. Joanne, are you listening? There are really big and complicated questions. And and it's not trivial for a parent to hold the line and continue to say, I love you no matter what. Even there might be boundaries. Someone met with me recently whose son is an adult who was abused as a child, and she said, "What do you think I should do?" And she told me she was afraid to have him in his house and that he tended to show up unannounced on a regular basis, and he has lots of weapons. And I said, I don't think that you should agree to be with him at your house unless there's another adult there. And if he can't handle that, then for right now, I think your safety is more important than whether or not he's going to feel bad, because it keeps you safe and it keeps him safe from going to jail. If it's that bad, I don't think you should just give everything over and just whatever happens, happens. I don't think that's a reasonable response.
I should shut up, so
Don't shut up.
so there's a condition called reactive attachment.
Disorder, yes.
And is that just a severe form of disorganized attachment, or it's sort of on a class by itself, because it's very hard, very, very difficult for those people
Yes,
to let anything in?
yes. So the question is about reactive attachment disorder. And honestly, if you send me an email, I'll go look it up. I don't know. I was so focused on just getting the basics, but it's a good question. And also, how is it a really common one for people that have been adopted? Yeah. Good questions, good discussion. Yes, go ahead.
It's certainly a form of disorganized attachment.
I would think so, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I was just thinking, she asked a question about, being like a third parent.
Yeah,
We've done some babysitting, and, we also have a daughter that has some issues. that
Mhm.
we've been working through 'em. But the verse that came to my mind, and I've talked with somebody, a friend of ours, that had adopted like 5 or 6 children.
amazing.
And most of those children had moms that were drug abusers and
Yes.
things like that. And this is the verse that came to my mind from Proverbs: train a child
Yeah.
in the ways,
Should go.
and he will not depart from it.
Yeah.
In a sense, that's about the best thing we can do.
Yeah,
Pour the word of God into them. Show them affection.
and love them deeply.
Yes, and spend time with them.
But it is, yeah,
That's what that couple, that dad said to those, there were mostly girls that they had adopted.
Yeah.
They had a couple of them that were little, but they spend a lot of time, and he said his wife never did anything but take care of his children.
yeah,
And she spent a lot of time. And
Yep.
a lot of times they had somebody come in, help her do the housework so she could spend more time.
with the kids. Yeah,
And it was,
yeah,
and it also, what you can, like you said, you were told you're not gonna beat anything.
right,
Well,
right.
You can speak life into a person,
Yes,
and you can also speak death into a person.
that's right. And the adults around the kids, beyond the parents, can speak life. And in my case, there were some people who did that. And I believe it's part of why I survived.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's,
yeah. Yes,
I thought it was really interesting what it said on the handout about people with the disorganized fearful attachment being attracted to people who victimize and take advantage of them. I think.
Could you speak up a little
Sorry.
bit?
Yes.
should have a hand
I'm
mic.
questioning why the people with a disorganized attachment style are attracted to other people who tend to victimize them. Because I think, like, anecdotally, I see that around us in our world. But why is that?
What say you? Why do people who have been harmed, why are they potentially attracted to other people that will continue to do harm? That's the question, right? Say that again. It feels familiar.
Feels safe in a weird way. That's
It-
the only thing that you know. And
Right.
so to have someone
It's a
treat you
great
with love,
question.
it feels unsafe. Like,
Yes. That's a great question. Yeah. Yeah, and also sometimes another piece of it, and we're gonna look at safe, dangerous a lot in the second half of our time together. Sometimes difficult childhoods where you have not been well cared for and the boundaries aren't clear, it seems like you can actually suppress what is our normal danger controls attached to the prefrontal cortex and also to the to amygdala. Both play a role. It seems like some people lose their ability to sense danger, and they're used to danger. It's like there's a two-pronged thing that's happening under the surface. Danger looks familiar, or harm looks familiar, but also I don't feel dangerous with this person. This person seems to like me. Okay, I'm gonna go be with that person. Worst possible choice, right? And yet it happens again and again. Other questions? Yes.
Well, in our situation, then at 12 years old, our son, we actually did a year of extensive Christian counseling. And I don't know what you think about this, but we actually went through that first experience.
Uh-huh.
And I would hold him. And
Yes.
I would say, this is what I would have done had you been in the hospital. If I would have.
Yes.
If I would have birthed you, and we went through that for a whole year, and I think that saved his life, in a way.
Very possibly.
I don't know if that
Yes.
is something that you
It's-
are familiar with.
I am, and it's a deep, I think, instantiation, a deep therapeutic teaching from the notion that, well, a couple things. If you were harmed very early, the way to heal that harm has to be in relationship with someone who's safe. And what was the other thing I was going to say? I don't know, it's gone from me right now. But yes, I am familiar with just the notion in general of reparenting. That if my parent used and abused me, then one thing I'm going to need to heal is someone who really cares about me, who doesn't harm me, and maybe, my therapist told me in the first couple of months, I was a psych major, I knew what reparenting was. And she said, I think this is appropriate that we follow this model, which means you're going to feel dependent upon me for a time. But the goal is not for you to always feel dependency. The goal is to allow you to be dependent long enough that you can make good decisions about your life. And then you're free. Yeah, it's powerful.
But we still went through hell for the next 8 years.
Yeah. I mean, it is so different.
I shouldn't say hell, but it felt.
It's so difficult.
But it did somehow do something, though.
Yes, it does have meaning, and it's real. I have a question for Joanne. Do we take a break at 10:15? Is that the goal?
10:15 to 10:30, I would think.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Whenever you decide it's time.
Okay. Questions? Any other questions that were pushed up by this discussion?
Maybe you mentioned it briefly and I missed it, but what was could you give us a quick summary of the results of Mary Ainsworth, or maybe you're going to get it later.
No, I can do that.
Of the experiment.
Yeah, the Situation Room.
and stuff.
Yeah, so the thing that she's most credited for is that she was able to identify by the researcher on the outside of the room studying what the mother was doing and what the baby was doing, that there really were these 4 separable types of mother or parent-child relationships. Nobody had ever, it was a big deal when she was able to identify that. And so then, I mean, the beauty of that, right, is that once you know that there's a pattern, you can you can sit with someone and say, can we change this? And how might we change this? If you have always been afraid that you're never going to be loved well, what can your parents do? And we'll touch into some of these questions as we go along too, like how do you help a child know verbally and non-verbally that you have their back, that you're going to be there? How do we pass that message? And that comes directly out of her work of seeing, wow, there are separable kids and moms, and those patterns are pretty consistent. And so if that's the issue, can we help families make new, better decisions? Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Maybe can you maybe give us a little bridge of some examples of what kinds of behaviors that she observed of the children
Sure,
in those various scenarios that
sure.
led her to those conclusions and so forth. Just a little bit of practical bridge there from the behaviors she observed.
Pretty much, yeah. So, I mean, in a situation, if she was to call somebody ambivalent, she would see a child that when the mom leaves, the child doesn't show much reaction. I'm pretty sure it's in ambivalent where children will actually willingly play with the stranger. And a well-attached child isn't extremely afraid of the stranger, but they also don't want to play with the stranger when they're waiting for their mom and dad. So there's this there's a phrase, object permanence. There's a time when we leave the room and our baby doesn't know if we're ever coming back because they don't have that time, that linear sense. And then we move beyond that into a time where maybe I'm a little fussy when mom leaves, but I know the babysitter, and I do actually have the sense that she's got my back and she's coming back. And I would say that information, I think Freud was responsible for some of this, but I believe the attachment literature also was partially where those ideas came out. And so then what? If my child is never responsive when I leave and she's 14 or 15 months, today, if we were aware of that sort of configuration inside this little toddler, we might ask questions about autism. Is this kid on the spectrum? And so if they are, then what can we do to help the relationship? What can be done to help that person, help that child, and that parent have a deeper attachment? So I would say those are how. Does that help? Yeah, cool. Good question. Thank you. Yes?
Sorry, I have another one.
No worries.
I don't know if cultures have a predominant attachment style, but I would say if my culture, as conservative Christian culture, did, it would probably tend towards an avoidant attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like kind of a consistent barrier to relationship, or it's hard sometimes
Yes.
in friendships or church or whatever to maybe kind of break through that wall.
Yes.
It's not something, the other person has to want it.
Yes.
So how do you, I guess, invite people into that?
This is the $1 million question. How do we learn to have capacity for someone else's woe? So this is an issue in I have a colleague who works in Pennsylvania among a number of plain Mennonite communities, and one of the things that they notice, and I grew up in a house that was not dissimilar, that there's no capacity to simply sit with someone and let them grieve, and I'm here and I love you. And I'm here and I love you and I'm not running. I'm here and I love you. If we don't have that capacity, how does anyone get better from grief? And so I have this little perverse niggling couple neurons back here that wants to try to infect these communities with the ability to sit with each other and not run out of the room. And if you're a therapist, if you're a spiritual director, if you're a counselor, you actually practice not running away from clients when they say the worst things, because it can make deep panic. How do we help people figure that out? And is my family and my church the only important place where I turn to know about myself, to know about others, and to experience the transformational power of Jesus Christ? If it's about my hat brim, if it's about whether or not I wear suspenders or not, I think we've gotten off. And I feel like those two things, the capacity to sit with capacity. Who was Jesus? The woman at the well goes to her friends and says, come and see the man. Come home, have a meal. Come and see the man who knows everything I've ever done. And I think she also said, and everything that was ever done to me. She wasn't distressed and shame-filled. She was deeply known. And I want my friends to know, to be known. And so how do we break out of cultural patterns? When I lived in Cambodia, the family is everything and your elders are everything, and you are never supposed to bring any sort of shame upon the household. How do you live like that? Not very well. In your experience, have you found some conversations? I don't know. How do you work with the reality of knowing that a lot of people are probably avoidant and don't really have that capacity to sit with each other deeply?
I'll tell you, he's my son, he goes after him. And he asks
Say that one again. Say the second part,
about him,
because he's your son.
after him.
Yeah.
And he asks them questions that
Yeah.
are really not comfortable for them.
Right.
But I think down deep, they're probably drawn to, because they
Yes.
know they really do want a deeperness
Right.
in relationship
Right.
or deepness.
Yes. So the question was, or the comment was, I know what he does because he's my son, and willing to ask some uncomfortable questions of people that are next to you but are not deep, and some knowledge that there is some deepness there somewhere, and so they might be drawn to you even though you ask things that make them uncomfortable.
Deep down, we all want to go to those places, but we're scared of what people are going to think or say about us.
That's right.
So I guess that's my question. Like, how do we communicate safety that helps people get over that fear?
Yeah.
Because I feel like the desire there,
Yeah.
but if the fear is greater than the desire,
Right.
it's like you're kind of AOL.
Right.
That's where that vulnerability comes in.
Vulnerability, and I mean, sometimes you got to do really crazy stuff, like a girl that I met who is like my daughter, who still lives in California. For 6 years, I related to her, and I never asked a question because I was not given permission to. I listened, and I listened, and I knew some pieces of her story. And I was pretty sure she had been profoundly abused because of some things that had happened, but she wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. And just as I was preparing to leave California for Cambodia, she said something, and then she stopped and asked me what I thought. And I didn't have an answer immediately. I was like, you want to know what I feel? I stayed long enough. I mean, and I didn't learn this by myself. I learned this from my therapist. I stayed long enough relationally without saying and doing things that would scare her and make her want to run away. And I knew that she desperately needed to be listened to because she had never been listened to. And recently, 2 years ago when I was there, she came and she put her arm around me And she said, I'm having flashbacks. They, meaning that I knew that they was her family. They really hurt me when I was a kid. And I know you know about flashbacks. I never told her I was a trauma survivor. But I sat with her, maybe in ways that nobody else did. And I'm not saying this to elevate myself. Someone else showed me how to do this. So some of it, I think, is, do some of us in community commit to saying depth matters and encouraging it when there's any tiny little bit of a door that opens up? But it can be a long journey. And it can be lonely. And then, so how do you find other people that can listen to you and do support you? Yes.
You can tell if you're going through something, you can tell them, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
That helps some people sometimes open, but you can't force them.
Nope.
You just have to.
Yeah. Waiting with.
Right. But like you said, traditions
Yeah.
can be very bondage.
And very, very resistant to change, right? Yeah.
I didn't have anybody to help me go through it, but it was, I guess all I can say is Jesus was the one that guided me through those things.
Mm-hmm.
And with Jesus and the Bible, just like,
Yeah.
I had an anecdotal answer to a friend's question.
Go for it.
Seeing this question of how do we get the ball rolling to get people to open up and not be avoidant. And one way that I feel like we've experienced that is by witnessing other people in a small group type setting be vulnerable and then watch other people sit and listen. And
Yes.
when you witness that people weren't angry, they didn't run away, it shows, maybe I could do this too with
Right.
maybe the response. And so
Yeah.
it almost like to get it started, you can other people might see a first experience of someone doing that and cause them to be more willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's been helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, and being prepared to say things like, well, I don't know. I'm going to just stick with what you said. Other questions or comments? And then I think we will take a break. Yes, please.
I find it helpful to say, if I were in your shoes, I would be feeling this and this and this, and I'm really sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And it frees them to, maybe gives them vocabulary.
Yeah. Correct. Absolutely. Another thing that I thought about putting in here, and I knew that we wouldn't have time to do it, but if you've never, you can Google this and you'll find them. Feeling wheels or feelings list. There is documented that adults, human beings, feel 270 different emotions. Who knew? I have no idea everything that's on that list. But helping people be having, and 270 would be really overwhelming. I tend to do maybe cluster things in like a group of 8 or 10, sad, blah, 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 happy, blah, blah, blah. Helping people actually look through this and begin to identify, well, what is it that you're feeling? Does this make you angry? Does this make you sad? Because if you've never been asked that question, I didn't know. I remember the first time my therapist asked me that question. I had no answer because no one had ever asked me, what do you want or what do you need? What's going to be a good situation for you? None of that had ever been asked, and I was 20 and clueless. So modeling it even if some people jeer or say that's really stupid or dumb, there's going to be somebody in that group, 1 or 2 people that are listening with ears high because they long for being seen and known. Yeah, it matters. Yes.
Maybe we could also avoid giving spiritual answers.
Ugh.
Set people off.
I hate it.
I do too.
Pronounce a Bible verse so the person feels better. Yes, so spouting at other people or giving your opinions with the woman I talked about, I knew with clarity she was not ready to hear anything I had to say, but she desperately wanted companionship. She wanted to be seen, and you can do that by showing up and being emotionally present and wait for, I mean, it really felt to me like it was holy ground and that I was waiting for the Spirit to open a new door between us. And he did in time. And now she's in treatment and she's gotten through college. She's not selling drugs anymore. She's in a church and cares about Jesus. Thanks be to God. Oh, yep.
Question, this is kind of a really different rabbit trail, but on
It's okay.
these 4 types of attachments,
Mm-hmm.
is there a known difference between the first one, being
Mhm.
secure, and the other 3 in terms of a child's, the age at which a child says, I have my earliest memories?
So is there a relationship between the problematic attachment types and the age where a child is able to say, hey, I remember something happened? I don't know. If you email me, I will look it up. I don't know. It's a good question. I just do not have any sort of an internal response, but I'm willing to look for you. Yeah. I love when you ask questions I don't know. I get to learn more stuff. Okay, this feels like a decent inflection point. Let's take, which is like a dip or a spike. Let's take 15 minutes, which puts us back here at 10:38. 15 plus 23. Somewhere in there. Thank you. You've been amazing. Thank you for your questions and your comments.